Hello and welcome back to Advanced Java. This is another video in the optional series on using Intellij. Specifically in this video, I'm going to talk about how to use the debugger in Intellij IDEA to debug our command line applications. Two things I should point out. One, debugging applications that are running on the Tomcat server are slightly different. And so I'll come back with a separate video that explains how to do that. So we'll have to do a bit of setup there. And then second thing, if you haven't already done the IntelliJ setup and a little bit of the configuration that I talked about in the Unit 3 videos, you'll need to go back and do that before you'd be able to effectively use the debugger. So just keep that in mind, that you've got a bit of setup to do if you haven't done that before, and this is kind of your first peek at IntelliJ. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to use the Lab 1 from Unit 4 as an example here. So that was the JDBC Select Employees. The thing that you'll notice about this application is that it's got a main method. And so if I get my cursor down here by the main method, I should see a little play button, a little green play button that indicates I can run this method. And since I'm not seeing that, it might just be a little bit laggy here, but if I do a right click, you'll see one of the options here is run JDBC Select Employees, the main method. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that, and we're going to get an error message. So the error message reads, cannot start compilation. The output path is not specified for the module projects. Specify the output path in the project structure dialog. And when I hit OK, that project structure dialog is going to open up. Now I'm going to cancel out of here and show you how to access that in case it doesn't pop up or in case you make a mistake and need to come back in here. So underneath File, there's a menu item Project Structure, and that brings us to the same location. Under Project Settings on the left-hand side, I'll choose Project. And here is that project compiler output, and you'll notice that the location here is specified as nothing. So I'm going to create a directory called out, and by adding this into this dialog, that directory should be created. And this basically means, okay, application, when you're ready to run, you'll need to be compiled and placed somewhere. That code needs to be put somewhere that IntelliJ knows where to find it, and that location is going to be an out directory. That's generally the name for out of the box where the code goes in IntelliJ that gets compiled for a given project. So I'm going to use that same standard here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply and OK. Let's go ahead, and now I see my little green arrow showing up here, so I can go ahead and choose to run, and we'll come back to the debug option in a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and run. We see things chugging a little bit longer. It did the build, and now I've got an error when this tries to run that says invalid source release 1.9, and that may not be obvious what that means unless you realize that the most current release of Java is 9, and that's what this is getting at. So I'm going to head back into that same dialog again, File, Project Structure, and here under Project Language Level, you'll see that this is marked at 9. We've only got JDK 8 installed in this environment, so I'm going to need to change this to 8. 9 just came out, and it's probably not really ready for prime time yet, in my opinion. So usually we let those things bake a little bit before we start implementing them, particularly in an educational environment. So any companies that you're starting to work for are probably going to be at Java 7 or 8, so we're safe staying at 8 for a little while. Anyway, that's how we fix this problem. So let's go ahead and hit apply. Okay, and let's try running that one more time. Things are going to chug along a little bit further this time. We still have one more issue to resolve. Here we've got a problem. Class not found, the driver, so that MySQL driver. Now if you remember, when we were using the run script to execute this lab, we had specified the class path, and we put that SQL connector jar on the class path. Well, because we're not running using this script anymore, but we're instead letting IntelliJ do that work, we need to now tell IntelliJ where to find that jar. If you remember from previous demonstrations here, we've got a lib directory that includes the different jar files or the classes that our application depends on. So I need to copy my MySQL jar into here, the driver files. So if I pop open my file browser and head over to Tomcat and the lib directory, this is where that MySQL jar is. Now I want to leave it there because Tomcat is still going to need to know where that jar is for our web applications to run later in this unit. So I'm only going to take a copy of that using Control-C, hop over here to my lib directory and do a Control-V. So I've got a dialog here just confirming that yes, I really do want to copy that jar file into my lib directory. We'll see that copy happen. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and add that to Git, and now we can see that that jar file is located here. It's now on the class path when I run at the command line within Intellij. So you may have noticed that we've got another way to run the program up here in the upper right-hand corner. So this is referring to the JDBC select employees application. It will run the main method. So I can go ahead and hit the play button up here to run. And at this point, the pieces should be where we need them to be, and we should see a successful execution, and we do. So we see the output from the program here. One note, if you're noticing this SSL connection warning, don't worry about it. This also happened when we were just running right from the command line, and I didn't point it out previously, but that's not a concern for this class anyway. All right, so now we've got things working. Now we can use the debugger. So we're able to run the application successfully at the equivalent of the command line here. Let's now suppose that we want to inspect kind of what's going on within our application without having to use system.out.printlines. So let's suppose that I want to be able to take a look at that query string, but I don't want to have to use a system.out.println to do that. So I can set a breakpoint. Let's set a breakpoint here where we're assigning the value of Smith to the variable name. So I set the breakpoint by just clicking in the gutter, I'll call it, between the line number and where kind of the editor actually begins. So in this sort of grayish pink area. So I go ahead and click and I get a red button. This breakpoint means as my application is executing, stop here, stop at line 35. So now I can run in debug mode. Two ways of starting that. One is click on the little bug up here, or I could head down here, do a right click at line from, in my case, 113 where the main method is, and choose the debug option. So program is going to execute, but now the program is looking for that breakpoint location, and during execution it's going to stop there. So here we see it stopped. We can see that the line that we're currently on is highlighted. And if I step through this code, as I move to the next line using this blue down arrow, if you will, I can see what the value of that variable is here. So name in this light gray, it means the variable name is now set to Smith. I can also see that down below here in this variables window. So two places to look for that same information. The nice thing about this variables window is that if we take a look at, let's see, we've got a connection variable that's a connection, and here it's just showing us the toString for that connection, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But down here, I can expand out this connection and see what all the different fields or attributes or instance variables are on that particular object. So we take a peek in here, there's a ton of stuff, including the URL that we set up and the password that we set up. So if something were working related to my connection, this might be a place where I could come in and inspect and see, okay, well, did I typo the password? Is the password getting set correctly? Am I using the right port number? And we didn't actually specify port number in our connection string because it defaults to 3306, but that's something else that we could check in here. Lots and lots and lots of information. So I'm going to minimize that again and kind of keep us focused on the details here. I can continue stepping through my application, and we'll see as I do that, different values are showing up or were showing up. as the employee ID is getting set. And my highlighting seems to be just a bit off here. I think the line that's actually executing is down in here because we've just got that employee ID set, which would be line 48. So I'm not sure exactly why there's a bit of a lag there, or it feels like it's actually ahead of itself a little bit, but you can see the different values here. And you can also see how the program is executing. So that's super handy as you're maybe trying to follow the flow of your logic or understand how a new application works. The debugger can be super handy for that. A couple of the other arrows here that you can use to control the program. If I had a particular line that called into another method in another class, I could step into that. And so let's say this class called another one of my classes and I wanted to see the execution in there, I could use the step into option. Let's suppose that I'm done debugging and I want to just let my program finish without stepping line by line. I can do that by hitting the green button here to just let it finish. Or if I just wanted to stop and be done, I could use the stop button here. In my case, I'm going to just let the program go ahead and finish, and we're all set there. So that's a debugger, that's setting breakpoints. And again, you can just click them on and off anywhere where you've got an executable line of code. So you'll notice I can't set a breakpoint here on line 30. Line 30, there's no code there. So line 32 works great. All right, so there's much more we can do with the debugger. We'll practice with that more next semester in terms of watching a particular variable and seeing how the variable values change. But at the minimum, what I've shown you right now should help accelerate your debugging processes as you're doing your development. All right, I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and comments about using the debugger. Hopefully you find it as useful as I do, and it actually makes debugging a lot more fun than sprinkling in all those system.out.printlns. Okay, we'll see you next time.